welcome back to my channel. I'm here with another fall decor DIY video. I used a lot of Dollar Tree items while creating these projects. They were all super fun and easy to create, and I cannot wait to share them with you guys. So make sure you stay tuned for the rest of the video and give it a thumbs up if you enjoy it. Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more DIY and home decor projects, and let's go ahead and get started. In the first project, I created a fall center set using 4 glass jars from the Dollar Tree. There are always a variety of glass jars in different shapes and sizes at the dollar store, and you can pick whichever one you want for this project. I started by removing the lids from the jars as they won't be used in this specific DIY. I'm keeping these in my craft stash just because I feel like I might use them somehow in a future project. I started by mixing in a deep burgundy acrylic color in a plastic cup until I was happy with the shade. I then added some baking soda to the mix to create that textured matte paint finish that we've all been loving lately. This also makes the paint go further, which is a bonus, especially when covering a glass piece. Once the paint mix was ready, I used a medium-sized brush to cover the entire outer side of the glass jar. I then set it aside so the first coat can dry. I repeated the same steps with the other 3 glass jars that I mixed in a different paint color each time. Since all my fall decor DIYs in the last video were pretty neutral and minimalistic, I wanted to create some colorful pieces for fall this time around. So I used the warm brown, bright orange, and deep green color for the rest of the jars. But make sure to customize the colors to your taste and style. I gave all the glass jars a first coat of each paint and let them fully dry. Next, I went in for a second coat of paint to make sure the colors are opaque and that the jars are fully covered with their respective colors. Again, I set the jars aside for about an hour to allow them to fully dry. After the paints were dry, I used a roll of burlap and natural jute rope to add some detail to each of these glass jars. I had both of these in my craft stash, but if you don't have any, you can get similar items from your local dollar store. First, I wrapped the burlap around one jar and cut it to size with my scissors. I then used the first piece as my size guide and cut 3 more burlap pieces out of the roll. After that, I wrapped one piece of burlap around one of the jars and hot glued the 2 ends together in the back to secure them in place. Next, I cut a piece of natural jute rope and wrapped it around the top portion of the jar and created a knot to hold it in place. I made 2 loops with the ends of the rope to basically create a bow for the front of the jar. I hot glued these loops in place and cut the excess rope up in the end. Then I used a black marker to write the letter F on the burlap of the first glass jar. I repeated the same process for the other 3 jars and spelled out fall for the overall design of this decor center set. I had also picked up 4 different color faux flowers and leaves from the dollar store for this project. I cut each branch into smaller pieces and played around with the arrangement to see which colors go best together. Once I was happy with the combinations, I organized the flowers in the glass jars. That completed this first Dollar Tree fall decor DIY, and I really like how this center set piece came out. I love all the vibrant and bold color combinations, and I think this would look great on our dining table or even in our entryway. For the second project, I created a fall pumpkin wreath using a metal pumpkin form and some nautical rope from the Dollar Tree. I started by removing the labels and laying the rope on one of the metal rings. I used hot glue to attach this rope over the metal ring, working in small sections to avoid the hot glue from drying too fast and also to make sure the rope is straight and aligned in place. Once I got to the end of the metal ring, I cut the rope with my scissors and used a small piece of Scotch tape on the end to prevent it from fraying. I then repeated the same thing over and over until the entire metal form, except the stem of the pumpkin, was covered with the nautical rope. I used some macrame cord and wrapped it around the stem, gluing the two ends on the inside top section of the pumpkin form. This is simply because the nautical rope was too thick for the stem, and I wanted that detail to show through once the wreath was finished. In the next step, I created two bows using an orange and a green colored ribbon that I also got from the Dollar Tree. Not gonna lie, I've been very impressed with some of the finds this year at the dollar store, and that definitely goes for these ribbons. I love the colors as they scream fall, but they're not super bright and fluorescent. Anyways, to create the first bow, I cut two pieces of the orange ribbon, with one being slightly longer than the other. I created loops with each of these ribbon pieces and used a dab of hot glue to attach the two ends together. Next, I cut another small piece of ribbon and folded this one in thirds. I hot glued the folds and made sure to hold each one for a few seconds until it was nice and secure. In the next step, I placed the smaller loop ribbon on top of the bigger one and bunched up the middle section together. I wrapped the smaller ribbon piece around the middle section and used a small amount of hot glue to hold it in place on the backside. I then cut the excess off with my scissors. I cut another piece of the same ribbon and created a V shape with it. I placed the bow on top of this piece and hot glued it in the back. That created the first ribbon for my wreath. I basically repeated the exact same steps with the green ribbon to create the second bow for this DIY. I made the green bow slightly bigger than the orange one, but I didn't really measure anything and just eyeballed the whole sizing. Once I had the bows ready, I fluffed up both to give them more dimension and to make sure they don't look flat on the wreath. I used some faux fall leaves, of course from the dollar store, for the top and bottom of this pumpkin wreath. I cut 4 smaller branches for the top of the wreath. I hot glued 2 on each side of the stem and made sure to press them in place for a few seconds until they were secure. I then glued the 2 bows over each other and directly underneath the pumpkin stem. I hot glued 2 longer pieces of fall leaves on the bottom of the wreath, arranging them so they were pretty symmetrical and facing away from each other. In the last step, I hot glued a small faux pumpkin in the middle and over the leaves. That finished off this second Dollar Tree fall decor DIY, and I think this pumpkin wreath came out really cute. It was so fun and easy to make, and this one is definitely going on the main door to our house. In the third project, I created a colorful tassel garland. I used 4 different color yarns and some wooden beads for this DIY. I picked up this gorgeous deep green yarn from the dollar store, and I had 3 other yarns from my IKEA fall decor video that I used again for this wall hanging piece. Dollar store has a variety of different color yarns that you can choose from if you don't have any on hand. I started creating a tassel by wrapping the yarn around my notebook a bunch of times. I use another piece of yarn to create a knot at the top to hold the bunch together. I then cut the bottom with my scissors to release the tassel from my notebook. I wrapped another piece of yarn around the top of the tassel a few times and created an invisible knot to secure it in place. I explain in more detail how to create a tassel and the invisible knot in my IKEA fall decor video. I will link that video up top and in the description box if you want to check it out for a more close-up tutorial. I basically repeated the same process with the other yarns to create more tassels. In the end, I had 3 tassels of each color, a total of 12 for this garland. But make sure to personalize the colors and the number of tassels to your taste. To add more interest to this garland, I decided to add some wooden beads to the top of each tassel. I had this wooden beads variety pack in my craft stash, but you can get a similar one from your local dollar store or craft store. I used a small piece of scotch tape to wrap the end of the yarn where the tassel hangs from to prevent it from fraying. I then used a combination of 3 different size wooden beads and threaded them through that piece of yarn. I had a total of 9 wooden beads per tassel in this step. Now you can totally paint or stain your wooden beads too, but I chose to keep the unfinished wood look for my DIY. I repeated this for all 12 tassels, keeping the order of the wooden beads and their sizing the same throughout. While this project consisted of a lot of repetitive steps, I found it quite calming and therapeutic. I had my favorite show playing in the background, and I just enjoyed the whole process. After I was done with the wooden beads, I went to our back patio and found a wooden stick to hang the tassels from. You can also buy a wooden dowel from the hardware store for this project, but a stick from your backyard is free, and I love that it adds that organic touch to the piece. I arranged the tassels in alternating color patterns and secured each one to the wooden stick by wrapping the yarn around it and creating a few knots at the top. I also used small dabs of hot glue on the back for extra protection. Finally, I attached a piece of jute rope to the 2 sides of the stick, and that was it for this 3rd Dollar Tree fall decor DIY. I'm obsessed with how this tassel garland came out, and I love that it's super colorful and playful but simple at the same time. For the last project, I created 4 coasters using white foam discs from the dollar store. I used 2 packs of the foam discs for this DIY, and each pack contains 2 pieces. So you can definitely create more if you wanted to. I started by removing the foam discs from the packaging. I then mixed in a burnt orange acrylic color in a cup. I'm kind of in love with this color mixture, and if I had to pick one color, I feel like this is the perfect one for fall. Anyways, I used the brush and painted the sides of all the foam pieces with this color. I then set them aside and let them fully dry for about 45 minutes. After the paint was dry, I took out my macrame cord, and that's the only other item that I used in creating these coasters. If you don't have macrame on hand, you can find nautical rope or twine at the dollar store as well. I placed one end of the macrame cord in the middle of the foam and secured it in place with a tiny bit of hot glue. I then wrapped the macrame cord around this starting point and continued until I reached the outer edges of the foam disc. I made sure to use very small dabs of hot glue each time so none of it shows through in the end. Once I reached the outer edge, I cut the macrame cord and secured that end on the side of the coaster with some more hot glue. I repeated this process with the other 3 foam pieces, and that's really all there is to this last Dollar Tree fall decor DIY. These coasters were super easy to create, and since they're on the larger side, I can totally use them as tributes too. I think these will be super cute decorated on our dining table with other fall decorations for the season. I hope that you enjoyed these fall decor DIYs and decide to recreate some of these pieces for yourself. Let me know in the comments below which one of these projects was your favorite, and as always, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll catch you in my next video. Bye!